Hello and welcome to Lecture 2 of CRIM6590, Administration of Criminal Justice. This week's topic involves writing in criminal justice, more specifically writing in academic criminal justice, since this is graduate school. Being a graduate school student, it is imperative that you write well in all of your assignments and in your daily activities. People make judgments about your intelligence, competence, and education based on how well you write. Those of you who want to someday work in the criminal justice system need to understand that writing skills are very important to employment in the criminal justice system. In fact, just a few months ago, I had a conversation with the police chief who was hiring a new officer for his department. And the top candidate wrote so poorly that he ended up being bumped to almost the bottom of the potential candidates. So those of you who already work in the criminal justice system, you know this very well, how important writing is. So there's no excuse for poor writing at the graduate level. You already had 4 years of education to teach you to write properly, so we're expecting you to be writing at an appropriate university level when you're writing in your graduate work. There will be little tolerance for poor writing in graduate school in this course or any of the graduate courses in this curriculum. This was supposed to be mastered at the undergraduate level. So this lesson this week is to help you get up to speed where you need to be for this course and the rest of your courses in the graduate curriculum. So here are some major pet peeves in writing that are encountered by myself and the other members of the graduate faculty. First off, not following the writing assignment instructions. Make sure you read the instructions very carefully before doing any writing assignments. Make sure you're writing what you're supposed to be writing the right length that you're supposed to be writing, and covering the specific topics you're supposed to be covering. Spelling errors that should have been caught by spell check functions. If there's the red squiggly lines underneath the word, that's a problem. You shouldn't be doing that unless you know absolutely certain that spell check doesn't recognize a true word. The same thing goes for the green squiggly lines underneath, which is showing improper grammar. You need to make the changes you need to do to get all those squiggly lines out of your document. Excessively large paragraphs. When you're double spacing, every single page should have 2 or 3 paragraphs. At no time should you have one paragraph that completes an entire page. So please make sure you're watching that. Improper use of big words revealing that you don't understand their meaning. It's okay to use the thesaurus function to choose different words rather than repeating the same word over and over again. However, make sure you fully understand the meaning of that word before you use it. Don't try to use fancy words if you don't know what they mean. Next, make sure you are citing your sources. If you're getting information from another book or a journal article, that's okay, but you're supposed to cite that information. Okay, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, how to properly cite in the American Psychological Association style. Also, you need to cite the original source. So sometimes I encounter where students will put a citation in of another citation. That's not appropriate. So if you're reading a journal article and they're referencing another study, you need to cite that other study, not the article you're getting the information from. Papers filled with direct quotes. I would prefer you don't use any direct quotes. There's very little need for that. When you read research articles and journal articles, other than interviews of people, you don't find direct quotes very often. So in your academic papers here at the University of Toledo, it's not a good idea to use any direct quotes. But I have encountered papers before where what the student did was cut and paste almost the entire thing from other sources, but then used it in direct quotes. That's not going to fly. Please don't do that. Failure to use topical sentences in your paragraphs. Every single paragraph, the first or last sentence of that paragraph needs to describe what that paragraph is going to be about. And when you do that, it makes your writing so much more understandable and clear and helps you frame the ideas that you're using. Use of common or street language in your papers. Please don't do that. We don't use contractions like don't, it's. We don't use those when we're writing academically, okay? So make sure you avoid those. Don't use slang. Don't use profanity. We all speak with slang and profanity, but that's different. Speaking is very different from what you do in professional writing. Another problem is rambling papers that reveal that the author did not use an outline. You need to be very clear. You have your introduction, which is telling you what you're going to tell us, and then 3 to 4 major points. Point 1, describe it. Point 2, describe it. Point 3, describe it, and then a conclusion where you basically review everything you just discussed. It's very clear if you haven't followed an outline when we're reading some of these papers. Now let's talk briefly about how to cite with the APA or American Psychological style of citations. You have one of the readings for this week is a handout that describes it in more detail, but you'll find as you get used to this, it's pretty simple. And we're kind of flabbergasted when students can't pick this up. So let's go over it briefly, and then there will be more for you to look at when you do the readings. But as you're reading every single article and book chapter that you have to read for this course, the vast majority of them are using APA style. So just pay attention how the authors are citing things in the materials that you're reading, because that's how you're going to have to cite in your own papers. So if you're using a source with one author, doesn't matter if it's a book, a journal article, a chapter from a book, it doesn't matter. One author, you use the author's name and year. It's pretty simple. There's one of 2 ways to do it. As you can see here, the first way is in the text, Powell, parentheses, 1981. That's the year the book was published. Found significant differences among agencies in the use of discretion. Another way you can do it is just move the reference to the end. The study found significant differences among agencies in use of discretion. Powell, 1983. That's all there is to it. Now here's an example if that source had 2 authors. Okay, Powell and Jones, parentheses, 1981, found significant differences among agencies in the use of discretion. Or if you put the reference at the end, the study found significant differences among agencies in the use of discretion. Powell and Jones, 1983. And note when we're doing it within parentheses, you use the and sign, not the word and. And here's an example if the source has 3 or more authors. Okay? The first time it's used, you generally write all the authors' names unless you have the example here where you're including it in the text. So the first one, if you're using it within the words of the sentence, it would be Powell and Associates, parentheses, 1981, found significant differences among agencies in the use of discretion. Or if you're putting the reference at the end, the first time you cite the source in your paper, it would be like this. The study found significant differences among agencies in the use of discretion, parenthesis, Powell, Jones, Smith, the and sign, Jennings, 1983. Then anytime you cite this after this first time in your paper, you would use the following. The study found significant differences among agencies in the use of discretion, parentheses, Powell et al., which is Latin for and others, 1983. You never use et al. For like at the very top of the slide. Powell and et al., no. Powell and Associates, if you're using it within the words of the sentence, but if you're using it in a reference within parentheses, it's Powell et al. And again, that's only after you've used all the authors' names the first time you've cited it. And if you cite that source again, then you'll use the et al. Because we get the point at that part. Also remember, this is 3 or more authors only. Now I asked you not to make any direct quotes in any of the papers that you're doing for this course, and I'm sticking to that. However, at some point in your career you may be required to cite a direct quote. So here's how you would do it. The first example is Powell and Jones, parenthesis, 1981, then the page number of the actual quote, parenthesis, said, and then you do the quotation. Or if you're putting the reference at the end of the quote, it would be this way. Significant differences exist among agencies in the use of discretion, parenthesis, Powell and Jones, comma, 1983, colon, and then the page number. This is the only time you would put a page number in your citation within the text, is only if you're using a direct quote. And when you do that, you need to put that direct quote in quotation marks. So, that was just a quick overview, and you'll get a lot more detail with the readings for this week to refresh your memory of how you're supposed to be writing in all of your writing assignments in this course and in any course that you take in the Master Criminal Justice Program. So don't forget to take Quiz 2 this week. Look over the instructions for writing assignment 1 and get started working on that. Start formulating an outline for this first writing assignment. Hope you have a good week.